on Google Sensei. Okay. Um, so does anyone have any questions about having done some zazen?
I've read a lot of different books by different Zen and
Mhm.
Buddhists, not specifically Zazen, but there's been three or four books that I have now by Thich Nhat Hanh that I really, really
Mm,
enjoy.
mhm,
And just like the mindfulness and thoughtfulness, and just a few like meditative practice things that I've gotten into the last couple of years. And one of the things that I find so similar in terms of like the ability to sit with posture for so long. Like you
mhm,
brought up the trumpet thing, obviously, and like
mhm,
as a performing musician, or my it kind of reminds me of like that those moments I had as a student in drum corps and things like that, like standing at attention, like for
mhm.
15 and 20 minutes at a time, sometimes very like there is, I mean, yes, there is a regimented, almost militaristic view of that for certain that it portrays, but for me a lot of the time I found myself in those same instances using the same practices that I use for mindfulness and meditation, just
Mm,
about like that being present in the moment and like in my body and being able to control that,
mhm,
thoughts that come in and just go. There's so many similar experiences that I've taken from those moments in my life and I put into practice in meditation.
mm,
I'm
mm,
sure other people in music can relate where like I'll have flourishes of music that pop in my head, and then go away, um, or
mhm,
just, those kinds of things. Um, and I find it kind of pleasing and fun to let those things just do what they do and go away. Like I laugh
mm,
at them
mm.
almost, it's I don't know if anybody has a similar experience. But I find that
Definitely.
often in meditation.
Mm, mhm, mhm. You said something really wonderful, which applies to all of us, whether we're artists of just living or whether we're a painter or a musician. Is everything we do begins with our body, and there may be a mistake that, well, in modern Western society, tends to easily make, which is that our mind is somehow separate from this, or that there's a little pilot in here living our life for us, driving us around, and actually, almost everything that we do, we take up with the body. And so when we enter like the discipline of being in a marching band, or we are a um, taking up the meditation posture and embodying Buddha by doing this zazen practice. Well, mudras usually we think of as something to do with our hands, right? But actually, our whole body is a mudra when we take up the sitting posture of zazen, and we lead with our body because we can't control mind with mind. And so, just by being still and upright with our body, the mind we give it the best chance possible to fall into place, to just be into the moment. Uh, so, yeah, thank you for saying this, Kenton. Well, without further ado, so this week we find Eshin over in Tokyo. Well, kind of in a suburb of Tokyo. You can't tell the difference in Japan, a big city and its suburbs. There's no difference, so it's all just one big sprawl of humanity. But I came here with my wife to attend the 13th. How do I say that in English? It's called Jusan Kaiki. The 13th anniversary of my wife's grandmother's passing. In Buddhism, there's a cycle of ceremonies around death where, of course, the day someone dies, a priest will come and read a certain set of sutras, depending on the tradition that that family is a part of. And they read to the person as they're deceased in their bed. And then the next day, or perhaps the day after that, there is an actual funeral ceremony where, of course, the family's gathered around when that sutra reading is done at the deathbed. In some traditions, it's called makuragyo, and that's like it means reading a sutra at the pillow, which is kind of a cool image. But so after that, there's a funeral ceremony where there's a more elaborate reading of sutras, and sometimes lots of bells and drums and things can happen during that as well. And each different sect of Buddhism reads slightly different set of sutras with a slightly different intent, although the end result all looks pretty similar. The idea being that we're sending off the person who has deceased to practice zazen next to the Buddha. That's sort of the gesture that's at the root of all of the different Buddhist sects' funeral services. And then after that, there's a ceremony in a week. And then there's a ceremony in like 15 days. And they spread out just a little longer until there's a very important one at the 49th day after the passing of the person. And in Japanese culture, there's kind of coincidence that that 49 days pattern exists also in kind of the older traditions of Buddhism, something about that length. But in Japan, 49, I think, got crystallized because 4 is also, it's also been ichi, ni, san, yon, but it's also read as shi, which also means death. And then 9, which is 5 plus 4. This is the Japanese way of showing 9 on your hands. 9 is Q is the normal way to say it in Japanese, but there's also the reading ku, which means suffering. So shiju ku nichi, 49 days, means that you're saying death and suffering day. So it's taking kind of a complicated negative concept, a negative connotation of death and suffering, and making that something special. Indeed, monks, we also, in Japanese traditions, we shave our heads on days that end in 4 and 9. Pardon me. So, after the 49th day, there's a sort of there's a 1 year, a 3 year, 6 years, 7 years, and then 13 years. And then it gets longer and longer after that. And there's a 50 year, and then there's a 100-year memorial service that is taking place in the same temple where your cemetery, where the person's bones, basically, everyone gets burned in Japan. So your bones get put in a grave there. Sometimes in your own family grave, and sometimes in what's called a goshi, which is a communal grave. It could be a great big statue of Kannon, a bodhisattva, and in below where she stands, there might be a great big pit, effectively, where the remains of many people get put in, and so whenever people go visit their home, like for example, when I come here to Tokyo with my wife, we always go and greet her grandmother in the cemetery, which is in a temple not too far from here. And what's really interesting is that temple is not a Zen temple. It is a Pure Land temple. For those of you who don't know, I originally fell into Buddhism having been introduced by Chelsea here, my cousin. And when she dragged me into, I think you seem kind of Buddhist. And I was like, no, that's too cliche. I can't go that far. And she dragged me in, and I got stuck in Pure Land Temple in Chicago. And in that tradition, they venerate Amida Buddha. And Zazen as a specifically prescribed practice is not the theme. Instead, in Pure Land, recitation of the name of Amida Buddha. And Amida Buddha, for some context, is a Buddha who lived in one of the past lives of sort of the legendary tales of the Buddha who lived in our history, Siddhartha Gautama. He described a past life where and I think it was in the Jataka tales where this image of this previous epoch uh, was mentioned, where he practiced alongside a brother of his who and they who was called at that time Dharmakaya, and they practiced under a Buddha, and Dharmakaya reached the goal. He understood the point, achieved enlightenment, if you want to say that, before that person who became uh, Siddhartha Gautama. And it took a few more lifetimes, a few more eons of practice for Siddhartha Gautama to achieve the perfection of practice. But one of the cornerstones of Dharmakaya, who became Amida Buddha's practice, was a vow, actually a set of 48 vows, to produce a pure land into which all beings can be reborn just by understanding and reciting his name. They could be reborn in this pure land. And those 48 vows are really cool, and I'd like to explore them over the next few weeks. But needless to say, a few of the highlights would be to get rid of all of the tendency that we have as humans to discriminate this from that, from ourselves, from other people. There are specific mentions of getting rid of our varying qualities of beauty. So no discrimination between people we might find handsome or beautiful and ugly or unsightly, that we all are equal. A lot of talk about equality, and that we all have an opportunity to encounter the same thing, regardless of the circumstances of our life. And uh, and one of the interesting vows is that everyone can, without stress or obstruction, take up the seated posture of meditation next to the Buddha, which is kind of cool. It's sort of the, as a Zen person who was originally a Pure Land fan, to me, it always seems, well, the end answer is everyone's got to do the work at some point. So why not just jump right into the Zazen part right now, here and now? So,
There's something beautiful you said there.
mhm.
Sorry. Do how do you how do you expect me to refer to you? I like because it's so habitual for me to say Justin, right? Do I say
Yeah, yeah,
Ishin?
yeah.
Do I say Justin? Or does
Eshin,
it
Eshin.
Eshin? How do you how should I greet you?
I prefer Eshin just as I mean, of course, we have, of all the people here, you and I have the longest attached history. But for those of you who don't know, Kenton is one of my very, very oldest childhood friends. I began to play the trumpet because I saw Kenton and thought he was cool. So from my old musician life, Kenton was sort of a source point. But yeah, Eshin has a lot more to do with who I am than the name my mom gave me when I came out.
Sure.
You
Right.
know,
Well,
it has
it's
more. Yeah.
you said something, Eshin, that reminded me of like uh uh, referring to people as not pretty, not beautiful, not ugly, not there's something I was reading in one of my books recently, like um people are like trees. Like sure we could get into there's a prettier tree, there's an uglier tree, but I don't think generally people go around and fixate on a tree being ugly or pretty or that. Trees are trees. They are rooted, they are
Hmm.
planted. That's where they
Hmm.
are. That's how they are. We're not going to judge or treat trees differently because one's more beautiful or not. Oh,
Hmm.
we
Hmm.
should treat people more like trees.
Yeah,
It was kind of like
I like that.
the source of that, and it was like, but it was an interesting way to think of it. Like, oh,
Mm,
I get what they're saying, and it's poetic in itself too. But it's,
yeah.
um, you know, it's not in a way of like reducing people to less than human. It's humans are humans, just like trees are trees.
Yeah. Everything just as it is whole and complete, without defect. Um,
Yeah.
to continue to get into this, since that my wife's family are not, I mean, to say rooted in, it's much the same as in most of the West, where people are like, oh yeah, I go to church on Christmas, I go to on Easter or some holidays. They go to they're what I like to call pseudo Christian, which is totally fine. But just like that, on special occasions, important holidays, we go visit the Pure Land Temple. And sometimes they might listen to a Dharma talk from the abbot of that temple. But all the same, is a long old tradition in Japanese households. There's an altar like this, and this is called a butsudan in Japanese. Butsudan butsu means Buddha, and dan is sort of a word for platform, like a place for the Buddha in your home. And there are lots of things that are decorated on it, and this is pretty normal in most family homes. Uh, and it looks a little wild, but everything has a very special meaning. So, of course, in the very top, in the back, there's an image of Amida Buddha, flanked on the sides by Shinran Shonin, who is the founding master and also a contemporary of Master Dogen, who founded the Soto Zen tradition that I'm ordained in. So Shinran Shonin and his master Honin Shonin, and they are sitting on either side of an image of Amida Buddha, and then there's a water offering sitting in front of each of those three images. And then on a level down just below that, there are, of course, some sweets that are offered. And there's this is called an ihai. It's a funeral tablet with the name given at death to the people who are deceased. In this case, this one has two names of the grandma and the grandpa of my wife, and those names are called a kaimyo. Uh, in there's a parallel in warrior traditions. I think in Native American traditions, they do this something similar, where when someone passes away, they don't call them by the name that they lived with. They give them a name that has something to do with their personality or their character, and when they refer to them after death, did someone? Oh, oh, somebody's microphone is okay. But anyway, um, they refer to their where was I? After someone passes away, the Native American tradition that I read is that they don't want to call someone by the name that they lived by because it might call their spirit. And I've heard in whispers that there might be a similar meaning behind giving people a name, kind of an ordination name, for their when they pass into the next plane of existence, so that we don't pull them by the karma of our names, because our names carry a lot of karma. To go back to Kenton's question about what should he call me, the name that I grew up with or the name that I was ordained with. When you get called by your birth name, I think you all know, you have that. You can always hear the person who raised you, your parents or your mom or your dad, sort of yelling at you, don't do that, it's unsafe. It's like that name is just like that voice is in your head, right? And we have a lot of feelings about that, and that's one way of experiencing leftover karma that's attached to being called by that. I mean, if your parents always called you doofus or something like this, or your best friend called you, hey, idiot, then, you get karma from that, from being called that too. And when we are ordained as Buddhists, we have an opportunity to be called by a name that means something more to do with how we intend to comport ourselves in our lives than just by the circumstances of our birth and whatever associations our parents had when they gave us that name. And so at death in Japan, people are given a name which usually has sort of one of two directional aspects to it. One is celebrating a character attribute, or kind of a could be something that someone loved, like a hobby, or not usually their job. It's something more personal than that, but it could also be their kind of the way they were regarded in their family, or something that to which the priest might have thought they should attain to. You know, if somebody struggled in their life with, for example, substance abuse or anger, they might give them a name that kind of points to purity and joy as a way to encourage them and also encourage the remaining memory for the people who are uh, left behind, so to speak, to kind of purify their relationship with the deceased person, and also to encourage that person who passed away to uh, get it right the next time around. Whether or not, I always say that the jury's out on reincarnation. I think it works on a smaller scale personally, but it's what's most important is just to let people believe what they believe, because it's important for their hearts. Uh, and in many cases, Japanese have a strong flexibility to just say, oh, yeah, well, they'll be reborn in another life in a better circumstance. And that belief is, I don't want to say strongly held, it's more like flexibly held. But coming down to lower levels, of course, there are more offerings. Usually there's a candle here, and then there's incense, which can be burned in the incense burner here. And then there are all kinds of offerings. Like these are boxes of sweets, which will be offered on the altar for a period of time, and then taken down sometime, perhaps a week or so after, and then the family will enjoy them. And really interesting, of course, there are pictures of grandma, and then my mother-in-law's sister, who passed away when she was 41, and then her father, so grandma and grandpa. And then there are these beautiful, sort of mundane cups on the altar with tea in them that my mother-in-law makes every day. And these are actually cups that these people used during their lifetime, that they were like their favorite everyday cups. It's pretty normal. I think pretty normal everywhere. In your own home, you use a cup that you like. You kind of always go to the same one. And so even though grandma passed away 13 years ago, or grandpa passed away over 20 something years ago, that their personal cup is the cup in which, the tea or the coffee of the day is offered. And these are kept and offered very much as though they were alive. And when we have a special family dinner, a small serving of each part of that family dinner is also put on the altar to say, hey, we're eating together. Our family is always together. And does anyone have any questions? Yeah, Nick.
Um, when people in Japan get married, or sorry, when people in the this tradition get married, is
Mhm.
there any kind of similar change in the name? Like, I'm thinking about Western Christian matrimony and how historically the woman changes her name as sort of a symbolic, like, I am now, in a similar way. And I'm wondering, I've always felt like, why don't we both change our names? Like, it seems like in
Yeah.
the same kind of spirit of, like, we are now, something's different about us because we have gotten married, but, like, in this
Mhm.
typical patriarchal sense in Christianity, but I've always felt like kind of jealous that women get to do this act of symbolic
Yeah.
significance,
Yeah.
and men don't. So, like, I'm wondering in Japan if there's any sort of parallel with marriage.
Yeah. In the most common form that it takes is when people get when a woman marries a man. Of course, there's the same kind of trade relationship thing, or there's also still quite a lot of arranged marriage here. Uh, the woman takes the male's family name, but it's not always the case. And the conditions in which a man might take a woman's family name are a few. For example, if the woman's family is like an old business family, an old merchant family, and I'm talking old, like 1,000 years old kind of thing, then being arranged into a marriage, or if they were lucky enough to have fallen in love and dated and done sort of this sort of by your own individual power, getting married to someone, then entering that family also might also mean entering that household and entering that the family business. And in that case, the male might take that family name. Sometimes that's not so much that, oh, I married this woman and now I take this name, as I become the son of this father. Because maybe that family didn't have a son to carry the family name. And in which case the male might take the name of the female. Although it's more like taking the name of the father-in-law. I often joke with my wife that I would love to become an endo, but she doesn't want me to do that, although I think it would be great. Um, yeah. But yeah, generally, I mean, everywhere humans are, the patriarchy is a force.
I have a question.
Go.
What is it looks like there's sort of like a doll figure or something.
Oh, yes.
What is that?
Well, this is quite funny. This might have been a decoration. I didn't get to ask specifically about this, but it's a monk, actually. If you look closely, you can see he's wearing, yeah, twinsies, exactly. And this monk is carrying what's called a mokugyo, this fish drum and a stick. This is a thing that we use in Zen traditions to keep the rhythm of our chanting. So, mok, 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 kanji, zaibo, sagyo, jimnanya, haramita, like this. And it's a cute little statue. It's possible that this house is all new, relatively new, but this plot of land was originally the home of grandma and grandpa. And it's possible that this was an item that was on or near the altar in the old form of this house. That's very likely to me.
And then I have one other question.
Mm.
So is this a pretty typical altar? It kind of starts with like the representatives of the tradition, and then the like incense and some offerings, and then the photos and the other offerings on the bottom.
Yes, a very, very typical arrangement. For example, if this were Soto Zen, like the tradition that I'm a monk in, it would be, the main image would be Shakyamuni or Siddhartha Gautama, and then on either side would be the two most famous kind of original masters in Japan, Dogen Zenji and Keizan Zenji, on either side. And if it were a Nichiren, which is another branch of Buddhism, or Soka Gakkai, then the main image is actually not a Buddha. It's actually a beautiful calligraphy written by Nichiren, the monk. That's the name of a monk. The calligraphy of the name of the wondrous Lotus Sutra. So it would say Nam-myoho Renge Kyo on the main image. So that's sort of, if in the Pure Land tradition, venerating Amida Buddha, they say Namu Amida Butsu. It's like, I remember the name of Amida Buddha. I remember the name of Amida Buddha as a central practice, which is accessible. It doesn't take any time. Anyone can do it anywhere. And that's why it's such a good thing. Even farmers and busy parents can find time in their busy lives to practice it. In the Nichiren tradition, they chant remembering the name of the splendid Lotus Sutra, the wondrous Lotus Sutra. And lots of other Buddhist traditions chant that set of sutras. It's quite a large set. But like in Zen, for example, why just chant the name? Let's chant the whole thing. We're in Zen, we're all about like diving in and doing all the work. Everyone can do the work. You can all do zazen. You should all do zazen. And then, if you're gonna read a sutra, read the whole thing. The name is just a name. At least that's what I'm pretty sure that's what Master Dogen would say about that. Although, different strokes for different folks. Everything is fine. Any other questions?
I have a question, a different kind of question. So, listening to some Zen teachers or masters, it seems that they say that there is nothing to achieve or attain in Zen. But listening to you, it gives me the sensation that in your case, you feel that there is something to achieve or to attain. Is that right?
Yes. I think that's to put that in context, all the teachings of Buddhism through all the traditions over time change by nature. Sometimes a great teacher will change them on purpose, and they will adjust the way the teachings can be accessed by the people in the community directly around them. And the beauty and the mystery of what Siddhartha Gautama began to teach is that it's profoundly simple, but also profoundly multifaceted, like a beautiful gem would be one way to think of it. And each and every teacher in every tradition it's not so important who they are, but how they are. They become a finger which points to the whole thing. It's not even exactly Buddha. Buddha is a finger pointing to the thing. Don't get stuck on the Buddha or on the finger, or you'll miss all that heavenly glory. For those of you who know I love Bruce Lee. So in that sense, how we see, depending on the causes and conditions in our lives, in our generation and our societies, it means that we might need a perspective adjustment. And that's to say, like in the 50s and 60s, when Zen was really getting popular in the West, that became a way of describing the Buddha way that was catchy, inspiring, effective for people of that time, and still for many people living now. However, I tend to think that there might be room for adjusting how we understand what that means, or to help people now see deeply into it. That perspective might not match everybody in today's time. There is nothing to attain. How we take up practice, whether we're chanting Amida's name or we're doing Zazen ourselves, we don't do it to get anything. We do it just to do it. And when we adjust our regard for that in that way, it will produce results, wonderful results. However, if you try to get the fruit, you can't. It just evaporates. Yes?
Thoughts about that? It's like nothing to achieve, but you start the training with the goal to achieve something, but then later on you just do the training, the sitting, not to achieve anything. Example, you start jogging to get better health, but you will eventually perhaps get tired of jogging. But if you enjoy jogging for jogging, then you achieve better health as a side result, not as a goal in itself. Am I wrong in that view, perspective? What? Make it sense? Does it make sense?
Yes, it does. It makes perfect sense. everything everything that we see in our lives, everything that we encounter, we are encountering from the perspective of our conditioned experience. And so everything we look at, we apply our own ego to. And
Yeah.
in that, there is desire. Because we can't live, we can't function as a living thing without that sort of the pull, the gravity of desire. Desire is a delusion, fundamentally speaking, and yet that delusion as a fundamental is the ground on which we stand. It is the ground on which we walk, and it is the ground on which we sit, as a metaphor and as an actual thing. So we take up practice because we have a sense that something could be better, or we could adjust something to live our lives in a more free, loving, open way. And that maybe we're noticing that in most of our life we live in a rat race of malarkey or craziness, and that there might be another way to do it. And that desire, although desire is a delusion, is the thing which drives us. That's what pulls us to a practice. That's what makes us curious to pick up a book, you know? So, but when we deeply enter the practice and when we deeply begin to do the meditation, when we begin to be a runner, it's just the doing it that becomes its own joy, just as you say.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. I think if anybody has any last questions, you're welcome. But
I do have one last question, just to
go.
In reference to the altar.
Mhm.
So I know you're at your in-laws,
Yeah.
right? So I guess is the altar is there for those who have passed. So say, you know, like in your home, in there, is there just an altar that's waiting? Is there like when does, like, I guess, when does the tradition come to your home, rather than, is it only when your parents or that caretaker giver, name giver, is passed, or how does that tradition go?
No, it's well, I wonder, some of the longtime practitioners like John and Greg, do you all and Don, do you all have altars in your homes? No?
I do not.
If we have altars in our home, no, not in Sweden.
Oh,
Most people in Sweden are atheists, and if you go back in time to the Viking Age, of course, you had these old North gods, Odin, Freya, and did sacrifice to them.
Sure.
And they had the temple and so on. But then the Christianity come, and they was going to the church, so no altar. More and more atheistic in this country.
It's very similar to that in Japan. A lot of people don't carry the identity of like, I'm a Buddhist, although they'll say like, oh yeah, I'm a Buddhist, I'm Japanese, so of course I'm a Buddhist, of course I'm Shinto. It's people just are what they're basically what their culture is, and you can't extract Buddhism from Japanese culture and still have Japanese culture. So some people have altars and some people don't. You know, when I first started practicing Buddhism, you know, I put a little statue of a Buddha on a high place, and I put a little water up there, and sometimes I burn some incense nearby, and there's just a gesture to say, you know, I really respect and honor the teaching that has come to me. Not that I'm looking at I never looked at the Buddha as anything other than a symbol of seeking truth. No, the Buddha is dead and gone. He was just a dude who lived in the woods in India a couple thousand years ago, who said some cool stuff, and some people got real inspired and started to do some stuff to try to make their lives better, try to live in the midst of all the suffering, the inevitable suffering of our lives, and to try to understand what this is. And so I kept an altar like that. And since I've become a priest proper, of course, my work is in the context of, right in front of an altar all the time. So I have a statue that my master gave me, like a 400-year-old beautiful bronze statue of Kannon, the Bodhisattva of compassion. And I put some flowers up there. It's sort of loose, just like, oh yeah, cool, she's there. And maybe when I, actually from April, I'll be moving into a temple with my wife. When, of course, then when we're in a temple, we have a great big altar that I'll have to take specific kind of care of. But as far as this kind of arrangement, as you can imagine, it's something that people have to buy. It's made of beautiful dark wood. It's quite expensive. So typically, it's your grandma and grandpa. One of them goes first, and then they think, oh, if they didn't already have one for their parents, then they would perhaps buy one to have a nice place to put the memorial tablet of their deceased spouse, and then begin to keep this. And then that tradition gets carried over to the next generation, kind of as a... Saying about this is because I think some people have this idea.
Your mic is a little muffled.
Oh no, thank you.
No, that sounds better.
Okay. I'm trying a new arrangement, so if it gets funny again, say something. But the one of the great things about having an altar like this is that it gives us an opportunity to meet the people or pets or friends who have deceased, who have passed away as teachers in our lives. That's one of the ways that I personally believe it's really important to study Buddha in all the places that we can find Buddha. And that means teacher, not Siddhartha Gautama. I don't mean that. I mean Buddha as any being that points us toward the way. And there are a million perspectives because the way is vast and like a multifaceted gem. So, for example, if you had a pet that you really liked who was a good friend or something, and they pass away, we have to deal with our grief, our loss. That's an inevitable aspect of our suffering and our lived experience. To take a picture or something, a toy or something that they loved, and put it on a high place in your home, and then to kind of pay attention to it and remember that being, and give a small gift, just a pure, simple gift from time to time, perhaps every day for a while, and then perhaps it becomes less and less frequent. But that revisiting that thing, being thinking about the gratitude for your connection to that pet, or if it was a friend, remembering them in that way gives us more appreciation for the preciousness of our life. And also, perhaps there is some character attribute of that person which might encourage us to live a little bit more wholeheartedly, or to love a little bit more forwardly, to take care of the people around us. And sometimes that's by negative example, somebody was a pain in the butt, Perhaps when I pass away, somebody's gonna be like, that guy was such a pain. I don't want to be that kind of pain in the ass, so I'm not going to do that, But whether someone inspires us by some way that they might, for like the kaimyo, the name that's given after death, an attribute that they may aspire to as they begin to take up practice in some other form, or it's a character attribute that is something that was wonderful that we should celebrate and remember and maybe imitate a little bit in ourselves. Having it alter gives us a context, a specific place to encounter those memories and those feelings and that inspiration, which is Buddha in a way. So, yeah. With that, I think we're
Beautiful.
at a good moment to close. Next week, we'll resume our usual esoteric treatment of Zazen. Until next time,
Thank you,
everyone.
Richard.
Thank you.
Have a good week, guys.
Arigato.